In today's biased news, the US continues its Cold War fearmongering, Canada apologizes for dangerous air quality, and Donald Trump faces more legal challenges. In the latest episode of American Fearmongering, the Wall Street Journal claims to have discovered a secret deal between China and Cuba, in which an electronic spying facility would be set up by Chinese intelligence in order to spy on US military communications. Relevant US authorities have thus far denied the report, stating that it isn't accurate, though they say they're closely monitoring the relationship between the two nations, as the US has, quote, real concerns about their development. The journal goes on to claim that the targets of this spying include the US Central Command headquarters in Tampa, as well as Fort Liberty in North Carolina. The former Cuban ambassador to the US commented that Washington, quote, is trying to demonize Cuba again. The Cuban deputy foreign minister said, quote, these are fallacies promoted with the malicious intent to justify the unprecedented reinforcement of the economic blockade, destabilization, and aggression against Cuba, as well as deceive public opinion in the United States and around the world. Several US media sources, as well as highly positioned US officials, have used this news to drum up further calls for the violation of Cuban sovereignty, as well as further saber-rattling with China despite disagreeing with the report's authenticity. Hypocritically, the US has been spying on China since the 1950s, with the biggest intelligence projects emanating from Taiwan. This has been publicly confirmed by the head of Taiwan's National Security Bureau. The report follows many other attempts by US media to paint China's Belt and Road Initiative, as well as their recent diplomatic successes between Saudi Arabia and Iran, as nefarious strategies. Of course, their being nefarious is deemed so solely because it dislodges the United States as the undisputed global economic hegemon. These latest Cold War games only lead to regional friction, which could result in outright conflict to the detriment of humanity, rather than common-sense cooperation towards tackling issues of climate change and uneven development. This American aggression only serves the interest of the smallest group at the very top that are trying to maintain their wealth and privilege, and stand to benefit from further conflict. Millions of people in North America are facing air quality advisories due to wildfires in Canada. The fires have led to evacuations, disrupted air travel, and created smoke-filled skies even thousands of kilometers away. The US National Weather Service has issued air quality alerts for several states, including the East Coast and parts of the Midwest. Health officials in many US states have warned residents about respiratory issues caused by high levels of fine particulates in the atmosphere. Canada is experiencing its worst ever start to the wildfire season, with fires reported in nearly all provinces and territories since May. Over 400 wildfires are still burning, particularly in Quebec, where around 150 fires have been reported, and thousands of people have been forced to evacuate. The wildfires have resulted in hazy skies, poor air quality, and cancelled events in major Canadian and US cities, including New York and Washington, D.C. The smoke is expected to persist until Sunday, when a new storm system is forecasted to shift prevailing winds and bring potential relief. Former US President Donald Trump is facing a new legal challenge as charges for illegally retaining classified documents and other crimes are expected to be filed against him next week in a federal court in Miami. This indictment of a former president on federal charges is unprecedented in American history, and is made more significant by the fact that Trump is currently the frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024. The charges are related to Trump's handling of sensitive government materials that he took with him when he left the White House in January 2021. Investigators seized thousands of documents from Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate, including some marked as classified. Trump is set to face 7 criminal counts, including conspiracy, false statements, obstruction of justice, and illegally retaining classified documents. Despite these legal challenges, Trump remains popular with Republican voters, and his supporters have criticized the charges as politically motivated. European Union ministers have finally agreed on a deal to overhaul the bloc's asylum procedures, after a final 12-hour negotiation to obtain the go-ahead from frontline members Italy and Greece. Home Affairs ministers from the 27 member states reached an agreement on Thursday, which aims to end years of division dating back to 2015, when more than 1 million people, most of whom were fleeing war in Syria, reached the EU. According to the newly agreed terms, each country would be responsible for a set number of people, but would not necessarily have to take them in. Countries unwilling to receive irregular immigrants and refugees would be able to help their hosting peers through equipment, personnel, or cash. about 20,000 euros per person. The Palestinian president will make a state visit to China next week after Beijing expressed readiness to help facilitate Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. Chinese diplomacy has established itself as an effective path to peace in recent years, contributing to the resolution of major crises like the one in Yemen. That being said, the current plan for Israel and Palestine falls into the two-state solution category, which does not adequately address the crimes committed against the Palestinian people. And in positive news for the day, the Biden administration ordered on Friday that hundreds of square miles in New Mexico will be protected from further oil and gas production for the next 20 years. The land in question is on the outskirts of Chaco Culture National Historical Park, considered sacred by tribal communities. The new order from Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland applies to public lands and associated mineral rights within a 10-mile radius of the park. It does not apply to entities that are privately, state, or tribal owned, nor will existing leases be impacted. It's not much, but we'll take what we can get. That's all for today. We'll be back on Monday with more news. If you'd like to see episodes with more in-depth analysis, consider supporting the show on Patreon so we can grow and expand.